A very good morning to one and all. And as already explained in the last class about the instantaneous descriptor of a Turing machine. See, again, I'm explaining this. Why? Because this is the most important point in our concept of Turing machine. Because if you know how to move the right and the left, then it is very easy for you for implementing the transition mapping functions for the Turing machines like this. That's why again I'm explaining you. If we're having a transition mapping function with the state and the input tape like this, and the output is p comma y comma r, means you need to do the instantaneous description like this. That means here we're having q1 q2 to so on qi minus 1, and sorry, it is x1 x2 so on xi minus 1, and q is the state. And when I'm reading this q with an qi, when I'm reading this q with an qi, then what I'm getting here, when I'm reading this q with an qi, the output is pyr. Pyr is the state should be changed to p, and the input should be changed to y, and then you need to move to the right. That means, and after reading this, I'm getting an output this one, right? So how I am moving this means, just see here, and I am moving the y is an input. I am moving this y to a right side of this state, and the change of the state is q to p, right? So here it is q and now it is p, and whatever the remaining input that we're having after the xi, you directly you should write down like this. Is it clear? And the same thing for if it is left. If it is left, see here, and x1 x2 so on xi minus 1, and q xi plus 1 so on xn. And here when I'm reading q with xi, if my output is pyl means I need to move to left side. Moving to left side means, and already I am having an qi minus 1 on my left side of my q, on my right side of my q, and that should be moved to the left of the p. That means now my state becomes q1 x2, and the change of the state is p, and xi minus 1 and y, the remaining input xi plus 1 so on xn, right? And this is the way of doing the transition mapping function with the moves, whether it is a left move or with whether it is a right move. That means moving with an input tape, changing along with the state can be done in an Turing machines. So this we can call it as an instantaneous description of an Turing machine. And this thing I already explained in the last class, but again I'm repeating because that this concept is that much important. And if you know how to do the moves to right and left, then it is easy for you while designing the Turing machines. And the next concept here is variations of Turing machines. And here we're having different variations of Turing machines. In that, the first one is a multi-tape Turing machine, and the second non-deterministic Turing machine, and the third is a multi-head Turing machine, and the fourth is an offline Turing machine, and the fifth is a multi-dimensional Turing machine. These are all comes under the variations of Turing machines or various types of Turing machines. We can name it as an. And here what the multi-tape Turing machine is, and each and every type of Turing machine I will explain now. Let's see. And the first type, it is a multi-tape Turing machine, right? So this is a multi-tape Turing machine, and here what the multi-tape Turing machine means, and here we're having and several tapes with a not, we're not doing with a single tape. Here we're implementing within several tapes, and also every tape have their own control, and with the read or write header. And compulsory we need to maintain the read or write header here, and with pointing of this read or write header we need to control each and every tape, and controlling should be done with an read or write header. And here for n tape Turing machines, we're having the machine, the definition of the machine, the mathematical definition of the machine is m is equal to q sigma tau del q naught b and f. That means n tape means, if you are having n number of multi tapes Turing machines, means the same definition that we are applying here, but where we are having the difference means At the place of transition mapping function, that is del defines q maps with tau, where the tau is n tape tau. That means it consisting of an n number of input tape symbols. So it should be mapped with q that maps with an tau, where tau power n into is nothing but a mapping with both the left and right, where those are also denoted with an power n. N is nothing but an n tape. N tape means multiple tapes. If you are using multiple tapes, means that should be denoted by an n tape machine like this. And this is a simple definition. We can have this type of questions for the 2 marks at the time of examinations. And explain about multi-tape Turing machine means just you need to define what the multi-tape Turing machine is. And here the Turing machine consisting of several tapes, and every tape have their controlled on read or write header. And just by defining with a machine like an M and defining all the 7 tuples like this, and you need to define the main difference between an normal Turing machine to an multi-tape Turing machine. And there where we're having a difference means at the transition mapping function, we need to show the difference between these two. And just note down this del what the del mapping function, the del transition function maps with number of states, a finite number of states, mapping with an finite input tape symbols. And along with that, you need to map with the left or right moves, right? And this is the most important syntax for the multi-tape Turing machine. Please make a note of this. And with the definition of the 7 tuples, with the mathematical definition of the 7 tuple machine with an M, you need to define the transition mapping function with this, right? You need to show the transition mapping function with this. Then it can clearly shows that it is a multi-tape Turing machine. If you didn't put power n, if you didn't put power n, then it is simply an Turing machine. It is simply an Turing machine. If you put power n means it defines that, it denotes that it is a multi-tape Turing machine, right? So now the next variation is non-deterministic Turing machine. And the here we need to know what the deterministic Turing machine is, and then you need to know what the non-deterministic Turing machine is. And always these NDTMs, you can call them as an NDTMs, and the deterministic Turing machines can be called it as an DTMs. These non-deterministic Turing machines are similar to the DTMs. DTMs are nothing but an deterministic Turing machines. And except here we're having a simple difference between these two. What that is, except that any input symbol and the current state, it has a number of choices, then it can be called it as a DTM. Otherwise it can be called it otherwise it can be called it as an NDTM, right? That means if you're having n number of choices, and if you're having n number of input symbols, and the n number of current states, then you need to go for the non-deterministic Turing machine. Except all these, we can consider that as an deterministic Turing machine. And here how the strings are getting accepted by the non-deterministic Turing machines is, and if there is a sequence of moves that leads to the final state, then we can say that it is an acceptance by a non-deterministic Turing machine. And here also we're having the transition mapping function for this NDTM. And the n number of a finite number of states mapping with a finite number of input tape symbols, right? And actually the transition mapping function is q that maps with n tau, and where it is 2 power, where it implies to 2 power n number of states with an n number of tape symbols along with mapping with left or right, then it can be called it as an NDTM. Actually we know that q into sigma is 2 power q, as per we learned in unit number 1, right? At that concept of NDFA, there we defined the transition function for NDFA is q into sigma is 2 power q, where for DFA it is q into sigma is q, right? Same as here. And while coming to the NDTM, q into tau here, tau always defines an input tape symbols, and q into tau is giving an output in the form of 2 power q into tau into left or right moves, right? And please all of you make a note of this transition function also. Then it defines that it is an NDTM. It is an NDTM. And here only we are having three most important points to remember while talking about the NDTMs. And always these NDTMs are similar to the DTMs, except when we can say that it is an NDTM means for any input symbol and current state, it has number of choices. If it has n number of choices, then we can say that it is an NDTM, right? And how we can say the acceptance of the NDTMs means the string acceptance by the NDTMs means the same thing. Based on the sequence of moves where at final move leads to the final state means then we can say that it is an acceptable. Otherwise, it is rejected or not accepted. And this is a transition function for the NDTMs. Please make a note of this transition function. And the third one that we're having for variations of Turing machines means multi-head Turing machine. Multi-head Turing machine, where it is a third type of a Turing machine, and the first is a multi-tape, and the second is a non-deterministic NDTM, and this is a multi-head Turing machine. And here the multi-head Turing machine has number of heads instead of one, right? Instead of one head, we're having here number of heads. That's why we're calling it as an multi-head. So each head is independently read or write symbols, and it independently moves to left or right, and it can keep stationary like this. See here we're having a simple example, a simple structure for this. This is a control unit where we can control our own read or write header symbols to move left or to move right, right? So but here we're having uh, independent read or write heads to each and every input symbol. So that's why we can call them as an multi heads. That means a number of heads instead of one. Instead of one control unit, we're having number of heads. So we can call them as an multi-head Turing machines, right? Please make a note of this structure also. This will be useful for you to recognize this. This is a multi-head Turing machine. When we are talking about the types of Turing machines, if I show the structure and just recognize which type of a Turing machine it is just by seeing the structure we can recognize that it is a multi-head. Why? Because here we are having n instead of one, we are having n heads to control each and every input symbol. So then automatically we can say that it is an multi-head Turing machine, right? And the next one, that is an offline Turing machine. Offline Turing machines has two tapes. What those means? One tape is only for read only and contains the inputs, and the another tape is for read write and is initially blank. Always it should be blank. See here we're having the two tapes, and this we can call it as an offline Turing machine. And the first tape is only having the read we are having and read only, and it contains the input like this is an input tape. And the second is read or write, and initially it is blank. Initially it should be blank. This is a read or write tape, and this is only read only input tape. And this we can call it as an offline Turing machine, where it is having two tapes, read only and read or write header, right? And in between we need to control it, right? Control it just by using a control unit, and we are controlling our own read or write headers. Read only input tape and write or read tape, and initially we need to take it as a blank. This is an offline Turing machine. And next one, it is multi-dimensional Turing machine. And here in multi-dimensional Turing machine, we're having multi-dimensional tapes, because we need to talk about the input tapes. Depending taking on the input tapes, we're defining which tape it is, which Turing machine it is. So as already said that the multi-dimensional Turing machine has an multi-dimensional tape. So here for example we are taking a two dimension Turing machine, where it would read and write on an infinite planes. So it should divide it into some squares like in checkerboards, right? So for a two-dimensional Turing machine, we're having a transition function that is defined like this. And Along with the left and right, we are giving u and d, because this is a two-dimensional Turing machine, right? If it is in 3, we need to take 3. If it is in 4, you need to take 4. That means u and d. By dividing along with the most, you need to define u and d like this. That you it should shows that it isn't two-dimensional. And if you're having 3, three-dimensional, if you're having 4, four-dimensional, like that, you need to define the multi-dimensional Turing machine, where we're defining the multi-dimensional Turing machine with a multi-dimensional tapes. So one for reading and one for writing, right? And one we're taking in the two-dimensional, we would read and write on an infinite plane, right? So that's why we divided into squares as well as like in checkerboards, one for square and one for a checkerboard. And here this is the most important transition function for defining the multidimensional Turing machine. And if you see the mapping function like this, then you can easily recognize that which type of a Turing machine it is. So please make a note of this also. The transition mapping function for the multidimensional Turing machine is q into tau, into where it gives q into tau into the left right along with an u comma d. And the last one we're having here, that is the last type of a Turing machine, that is uh, up to now we learned about some various types of Turing machines like a multi-tape, non-deterministic Turing machine, offline Turing machine, and multi-head Turing machine, multi-dimensional Turing machine. So these are the 5 types of Turing machines that we're having with an examples. And with the transition mapping functions, I show you each and every type of a Turing machine, right? So with this, the concept of variations of Turing machines are completed, and here we're having the last concept, that is applications of Turing machine. These are the basic things, basic fundamental introduction of the Turing machine that I'm explaining from last class and this class. And I didn't enter into the designing of the Turing machines. In the next class, I will start how to design the Turing machines, and then I will go for the computabilities, right? And after making you to understand how to design the Turing machines, and then after completion of the concept of designing the Turing machines, then I will explain you the computability unit. And up to now, the from last class and today's class, what I'm going to explain you is only about the introduction of Turing machine, just making you to understand the definition and a formal definition, along with that the mathematical definition. And the model of the Turing machine, I show you the model of the Turing machine, how to represent the model of the Turing machine, and what the instantaneous descriptor is, and all the things, the fundamental basic concepts of Turing machines I am explaining to you. And here I'm having the concept of applications of the Turing machine, and we're having mostly 3 important applications of Turing machines. One at check decidability, and the next is an classify problem, and the third one is an design and implement algorithm for practical machines. These are the 3 most important applications of the Turing machines. Again, I'm repeating, the first one is an check decidability. And how we can check the decidability means, and if we cannot solve a problem and it is uncountable time, then there could not be any algorithms which could solve that problem. Then we need to call them as an undecidable problems. So we are having some decidability and undecidability, and we need to check it out whether those comes under an decidable or undecidable. That means if you get a solution means, then those are comes under the decidable problems. In an countable time, if you get an solution, then it can be called it as an decidable. And in the countable time, if you are not getting the solution for the problem, then we can consider them as an undecidable. That means we could not we are not having any algorithms to solve those, then those are all comes under the undecidable problems. So here in the application of check decidability, I um, use 2 different terms, that is decidable and undecidable. And when we can say that decidable, and when we can say that undecidable. So for a decision problem here, if it's Turing machine halts, that means when somewhere we need to halt the Turing machine, right, in countable time for all finite length of inputs, then we can say that that problem could be solved by any algorithm in countable time, then it is an decidable, right? So we can call all, these also as in decision problems, right? that we can name it as a check decidability. We need to check it out whether we can decide or whether we can not decide. So deciding means in and countable time. By applying some algorithms, you need to solve the problem. Undecidability means in and countable time, you are not getting solve the problem, but you're not having any algorithms to be used to solve that problem. Those That means we're not having any algorithms to apply. And finally we can say that those are comes under the undecidable. Make it clear, decidability and undecidability. And now the second application of the Turing machine means the classify problem. And here how the Turing machine helps to classify the decidable problems into classes of polynomial hierarchy. This we can call it as an hierarchy, what we can call it as an class hierarchy. How to classify the problems with the help of the Turing machines. Suppose if we found that the problem is decidable, we are having some algorithms to apply, and with the algorithms we can get the solution. And then we found those, then we can treat them as an problems. The problems are the decidable problems. Then our target becomes how efficiently we can solve it, right? That means the efficiency being calculated in number of steps here, and with the extra space that we used, or the length, or the code size, or any other of the finite state machine, we can calculate the efficiency. And finally we can name it as the classification of the problem. That means in the check decidability we can decide, we can make it, we can check it for whether we can decide or whether we can not undecide. And while coming to the classification, and in how much efficiency we can solve the decidable problems, that's the target we're having here for classifying the problems. And the third one, that is an design and implement algorithm for practical machines. And how this Turing machine helps to propagate the idea. That means how to design and how to implement the algorithms, and practically how to do all these. And here we need to propagate the ideas of an algorithms in other practical machines. And after that, what we need to do is, and after that, we can get the successful checks. That means by applying one two criteria, we can get some output, right? That means that can be used for our practical devices, or for some computers, to design and implement the algorithms. So these are the three most important applications of the Turing machines. How the Turing machine can helpful to check the decidabilities, to classify the problems, and to design and implement the algorithms for the practical machines, right? And the make a note of these three important applications of the Turing machines. Okay, then I think it is clear to you all and about the applications and about the various types of the Turing machines that I explained in this class. And from the next class onwards, I am starting the designing of the Turing machines, and it's somewhat complex while comparing to the remaining types of finite state machines. And you please clearly understand what I am saying, and please make a note at the time of explaining. Then it can be easy for you how to move. Only at the point of moving to left and moving to right, there only we can get confused. Otherwise the remaining all is same as per the remaining other finite state machines. And when I am saying the designing concept, designing of the Turing machines, please all of you make a note. And noting while I'm explaining, noting down is most important, because if you follow up with noting down, means you can easily understand how I am moving to left and how I am moving to right most, right? Otherwise it gets confused to you and it makes you somewhat complex. And the concept of designing of Turing machines I'll start in the next class. And in this class I explained you about the various types of Turing machines, and I explained you 5 types of Turing machines. And I explained you what the applications of the Turing machines is.